Okay.
Okay. All right.
So our vision for this group is, we say a rising tide lifts all boats, so. We're all here solving problems together with the tech already, so this is kind of what we wanted it to be like, right? Like, I can't get this to work for my podcast. Has anybody had this problem before? And. Has anybody ever figured it out? So, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to all help each other make our podcast better, so we all rise to the top 1%, right? That's the dream. Where aren't you going?
Because
Can you click to the next slide for me? Thank you. So, why are we doing this now? Well, right now, podcasting, I think, is kind of coming into its own, or has come into its own. It's super exciting. It's a lot of fun. We went to PodFest last month. I know some other people were there too. Rob gave a presentation, Stacy gave a presentation, Antonia, Reese, Kat, Sonia, Richard, we were all there. And there's just so much excitement and growth in this industry. And if you check something one day, check it 2 weeks later, because it could be different. Right? And the benefits of having a podcast, I'm not even going to start there because I have a whole presentation on the benefits for business. But Stacy and Rob are going to talk about that too. It's just very many benefits. And I'm sure a lot of you in the room already know this. And then we want to help other people tell their stories, and we want to tell our stories and educate each other, right? Okay.
does everybody know what PodFest is?
Oh,
That's a really good point.
Quick, go Rob,
Yeah.
one of us could do it.
Why don't you tell us what PodFest is, since you
Yes.
brought it up?
PodFest started 10 years ago with just about the same number of people right here in Tampa, Florida, by a great guy by the name of Chris Krimitsos. And every year it got bigger, bigger, bigger. And it moved on from podcasting to vlogging to blogging to speaking to book writing. And I think we hit a record during the pandemic of about 5,000 people globally. And it's usually about 4 days long. Amazing people are there. I cannot. Hillary and I were just saying, we didn't meet you guys there. We're the loudest and goofiest people. And it is known for its intimate community.
Right.
There's another huge event, which is awesome. It's called Podcast Movement. That's a huge, large scale, not maybe as intimate. Of course, I'm biased, but the PodFest is amazing. I've got tons of friends from there for 10 years. I've been going for 7, so it's fantastic. And it's in a beautiful area in the middle of winter, so Orlando.
And if you want to know how intimate, talk to Stacy about her experience there. It was really touching, but we don't have time right now, so I've been cutting you all off. I have to cut myself off. So Gearhart Law started 18 years ago. Richard and I had both been in corporate before that. I wasn't working at the time. He decided to take the leap. I was poking him with a sharp stick saying, I'll help you any way I can, dealing with entrepreneurs. And I, as both an entrepreneurial firm, but also most of the clients are entrepreneurs. And I became a patent agent. I have a PhD in chemistry and used that to become a patent agent. And then we decided that we needed somebody who knew the business to do the marketing, because it's so niche, patent, trademark, and copyright law. So here we are, happily going about our business. And Kenya Gibson, who we had met in New York networking, called me one day and said, I moved to iHeartRadio and I have an idea for you and Richard. Meet me in the city. So I did. So she said, what about a 1-hour radio show for entrepreneurs where you interview somebody like Rob, for instance, who's accomplished and an industry expert. And then you have 2 people that are building their businesses come on, and we do an hour-long show. And a few of the people here have been on the show. I know, Chris, you were on the show. Yeah. And
Elizabeth,
what?
just so we can see you.
Oh, am I out of the picture?
Yeah. Now you
Oh,
are.
sorry. Okay, I'm waving my hands around like crazy. So, long story short, we did the show. iHeart was one of the first stations to take their radio shows and make them into podcasts. And about the time we were starting the show in 2018, they decided to go real big in the podcasting industry. So now we're not in the top 5% anymore. We're in the top 3%, we found out today. Yay, of podcasts. So yeah, we've been working on the podcast part of it. Had a lot of help. Kenya Gibson also helped us get nationally syndicated. So we're across the country. We just added Boston and Atlanta and someplace in Texas. We're in Portland, Oregon. So believe it or not, people actually listen to us talk. It shocks us more than anybody. And we're starting our 7th year with it.
Congratulations.
And I have a couple other podcasts too that I play around with to do research, like, it sounds like a lot of people here get addicted and have more than one. But a few observations, these are from PodFest. Consistency is key, as you all know, anybody who's ever done any marketing or any posting or anything, if you're gonna do it every week, do it every week. If you're gonna do it every 2 weeks, do it every 2 weeks. And there are two reasons for that, which I'll get to. And then the other thing people were saying is niche, niche, niche. So tell people what your podcast is actually about. Nobody can be a Joe Rogan anymore and just do something about nothing or everything. And the reason is your audience wants to know, they want to know what to expect, but more than your audience is the algorithms. So if Apple doesn't know where to put you, it's not going to suggest you as content to listen to next. YouTube's not going to suggest you as content to watch next because they don't know what you're about. So we found the people there were saying that the more they niche, the more listeners they got, the more engagement they got, which I thought was counterintuitive because you'd think if you spread a wide net, you'd get more people, but people, you know, I'm not going to go listen to something if I don't know what it's about. And then YouTube added podcasts 18 months ago, but if you ask Rob, they're not really podcasts. The way they did it is not a true podcast, right? They're calling it that, but that's not really true. But also last month they added the ability to import audio RSS feeds. So for those of you who have podcasts, you know what that means. If you don't have a podcast, you upload your podcast to one of these distribution sites, right? Your distributor. So like BuzzFeed is a good one for audio podcasts. So now, and you can choose where you want it to go. So like if you put it on BuzzFeed, you want it to go to Apple, you want it to go to Spotify, YouTube wasn't one of those choices. Now it is, and it will put a static image with it. So it will take your audio and put a static image. I haven't tried it myself, so I've been reading some comments on it. I'm not really sure. Rob is smiling over here, so I'm not really sure how it's working. Okay. So, how can we help is what we want to know. So future meeting topics, anything that people want to hear about, speakers that we should get. Our next meeting, we are actually going to have Chris Baglia, who's back there, on a panel, and Mike Ham, who has a Jersey Garden State podcast. And we're going to talk about, and Stacy, of course, talk about marketing your podcast. And then we want to have a community platform. We're thinking Facebook, but we just kind of wanted to take the temperature of the room. How many people would want a Facebook platform for sharing ideas and thoughts in a group? Yeah, no?
So other than
Yes.
Facebook, it could be, right, it could be Discord, it could be Slack. I mean, I think WhatsApp. So there's a lot of opportunities. We have to figure out what's the best for everyone.
Right.
But we want the goal is to create a community to keep the conversation going when we're in the room, when we're online, and when we're off.
Yes.
That's
So-
to come.
Now we're on to Stacy. So let's bring it up. Stacy's Richard. Can you help them? Richard's my tech guy.
So 1 minute for everybody on the if one wants to convert a podcast or audio MP3 to video with multiple setup, we can use this. Okay, yes, keep sharing in the comments because everybody can see them.
You can't minimize, but you can make it small. So.
Well, then we're just changing slides. So I'm gonna be talking, is it not working?
No, we have it. It's just. we
Oh,
gotta
right
find
here.
it.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Which one is Stacy?
Summit,
top.
New Jersey. Yeah, okay, so just page
Okay.
1.
So it didn't take quite as long as the last one.
I don't see it.
I think you have to open it first.
Let me open
Yeah, it
it.
hasn't
Yeah.
loaded yet.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
go.
so now put on this. Yeah. And I guess I'm gonna need to use,
I don't think we're sharing yet.
You're not
Are we still
sharing.
sharing?
Oh,
I don't
no.
Gotta
think
share first. It's okay, say.
I'm glad you
Just
noticed it.
escape. And then share the screen.
so. 1 minute, please.
Shares me.
1 minute, please. That one, yeah?
First slide, yeah,
Yeah, the Summit
Yep.
NJ.
Yep. thank you. Okay,
Okay,
then,
do the slideshow?
thank you. Okay, so I guess I should take this because I know my animation. Thank
That's
you.
okay.
Okay, all right, so hello, everybody again, Stacy Sherman, so happy you are here. I'm gonna be talking about podcasting, but my life has been around the business world in customer experience. Now, you may say, what does a customer have to do with podcasting? The answer is a lot. I'm going to get into that. So the advice I'm going to be sharing with you today is podcasting as the vehicle, but it's really going to apply to your business, whether you're an entrepreneur, you work in corporate, you're building a business, you're starting a business. All of this is very relevant what I'm talking about, but I'm also going to laser it into the podcast content creation space. Okay, so who am I? I've been speaking, I wrote a book, I have another book coming out this year. I just launched a LinkedIn learning course, and I was in corporate for 30 years. Yes, I'm that old. 30 years. Last year at this time, corporate left me. Yes, I didn't leave it, it left me. And it's been a blessing. It's been up and down roller coaster ride. I actually worked in the elevator industry, so it's pretty appropriate for me to say it's been up and down. So, yes, but I'm both. So anyway, here I am. I'm so excited, and I hope that this will click, and it's not. So,
I think you need to use the arrows.
oh, okay. All right. Well, I will move around a little here. Okay, there we go. So, my podcast. So doing CX right, let's just get on the same terminology. CX means customer experience. So if you Google CX later, you're going to find a billion articles all about CX. Now you know a term. I also want to teach you that customer service and customer experience, they're not the same thing. Do not use them interchangeably. All right, so a little lesson here. A customer experience is about our whole experience from before you even got in the room to being in the room, and your experience even when you leave, how we deliver an experience to you. Customer service is about, you call it 800 number, you chat about a problem. It's a support, and it's an important part of the customer experience, but it's one piece. So that's why it's really important that when you talk about customer service, you're talking about customer service. You are not talking about customer experience. That's holistic. All right. So my podcast, I started it 2 years ago. Before that, I was working in corporate, obviously, and I started with, oh, I feel bad at the people up here. I started with a baby blog in 2016. Okay, a blog. I thought no one would read it, but they did. And so then I started to be a guest on 50 shows. If you haven't been a guest on shows, I highly recommend it because it's a way to get known for what you're passionate about. Okay. So anyway, it led me to my show. P.S. Fast forward time, here we are, 2024. My show is 2.5% global, according to Listen Notes, which is a very credible rating source. And I just won the W3 Awards, which is a really big award for the best podcast host category. So yay. All right. The other thing, just a quick who I am and credibility is also in 2024, so it's still a new year, but awards are coming in, and the only point of bringing them up is I know what I'm talking about, and they, they noticed it. Okay, so real quick, I write a lot for articles, for publications, and yada yada. All right, so let me just start by saying there's a microphone here. It's on purpose because it took me 6 months to take it out of the box. Okay, take the mic out of the box. All of you that I can't see right this second, and everybody in the room, take it out of the box. There shouldn't be no reason I took so long to take a microphone and even order a microphone because I was so stuck on what technology should I use. I mean, all the technology got in my way that delayed me. Do not let that happen. Just start or ask somebody in the room, what should I use? Or come here and use their studio. Okay, so take it out of the box. All right, here we go. So why does customer experience matter? All right, here's a fun fact for you. And this relates to your business, to your podcast, or to anything you do. It takes, okay, no joke, this is real fact. It takes 12 good experiences to make up for one bad. One bad. Think about that. You have to get it right from the beginning. So even if it's your business or anything you do, you need to really think about, what does my customer want and how do I deliver that? Now, who is your customer? I want to ask people in the room, when I say customer, what comes to mind? Audience. I wish I had a gold star. Yeah. Yes. Who else is your audience? Anyone? Sponsors. Oh my gosh, yes. You want them coming back, right? They're your customer. Who else is a customer? Give me one more. Yes. So, ta-da, exactly. These are your customers. So customers are not always a money exchange. It's not always transactional as you think about going to a retail store or online, we're exchanging money. So when we talk about customer here, I want you to remember that these and many more are your customers. So that they come back, they listen to your show consistently, as Elizabeth talked about consistency, and to make sure that they tell others. So this is the formula I'm going to talk about, and it really applies to any business that you're in. So, for example here, all right, meet Jake. Now, he is not happy. He's an annoyed podcast listener. He's a customer, all right? He can't get the show on the platforms that he wants, right? Are you showing up where your customer is? Important. Can't hear, inconsistency, the sound quality is awful, right? All of these are different reasons that the listener, the customer, the listener is unhappy. These are also things that are in your control, okay? That you can really make sure that at least the things that you can control, you have all designed for that. Now, I also want you to think about Bob. Bob is a guest. Now, how many, raise a hand, has a show with an interview? Okay. Okay, and you want to. Okay, my show is all interview. Same. Well, that's huge. My guest experience and your guest experience, right? They are your customer because how they feel about your show and how they're going to tell others or not, right? You want them sharing your show because that amplifies your show. Okay, that's an experience. So these are just examples of how it feels really frustrating. If you don't give your guests the warm and fuzzies before even podcast day, right? Did you give them what they need? Do they feel comfortable? Did they have the technology that, you know, for example, Riverside I use? You have to be on Chrome. So I send my guests that information to get on Riverside in the recording. You got to be on Chrome. If they went to Safari or any other, it's going to delay. Then they're going to come to my show all flustered and rushed and whatever. So how much do you communicate up front is so important. So these are just some examples again of pain points, and they're avoidable. So how do we do it right? All right, this is a long topic. I'm only going to touch the surface here. Bottom line, walk in your customer's shoes. I'm telling you to design before you even meet your guest or before you even figure out what your episode's going to be. Put yourself in the shoes of your audience, of your sponsor, of your guest, okay? So I'm going to try my best to speed this up. It's a little blurry, but so customer experience and doing it right is about a journey. There's a customer journey. And remember, we define customer in a lot of different ways here. So think about you, the last thing you actually purchased, a service or a product, okay? There's an experience around learning and awareness. And as we know of marketing and PR, and there's the upper funnel here, learn. Okay, how you buy it, is it Salesforce? Is it e-commerce? Is it something different? So the buying experience, getting and setting up, there's an experience of your product, using it, paying your bill. Oh my gosh, if everything else was really good, but I can't, if I'm billed wrong, or I can't reach anybody to correct my bill, or my self-service isn't working, that is a pain point. They'll forget the rest. Getting help, as we talked about, is customer service. So this is where getting help. So as a podcaster, right, there's a lot that you can equate to here around discoverability, around subscribing. If you're just on Spotify and your customer is on Apple, you got to be in both, right? So that's really important, is to know your customer, walk in their shoes, and understand where you need to be. And so there's a whole journey here that you can design literally on the back of a napkin. It just to start on how to go through these steps, or call me and help you go through this. So the point of the story here is that if you do not go through the journey very intentionally, they will leave. And here's the worst part. They don't tell you. They just leave. Okay, so think about this journey. Again, is a lot of pieces, because going into the journey, there's a lot of doorways within each step. But think about your business, think about your show, and when you go through this, are you delivering a really good experience? All right, so I'm going to talk about some actionable tips. There's a lot, but I'll start with one. So when you go through the customer journey, you need to actually validate. So let's say I designed how my customer is going to learn about, let's say, my show or my business. How they're going to learn. Well, if I decided I'm going to just promote it on certain magazines, but they're actually really just on LinkedIn and social media, I'm going to miss them, right? So what I design in my learn, buy, get, use, pay, if I don't validate my journey that I created by myself or with my team, your team is also your assistants, your interns, your virtual assistants, or your core team. You design the journey together, but if you don't go and ask real customers, as we define them, you miss the boat. You miss the boat. The game changer is design it internally, validate what you created externally, and then fix the gaps. Okay. And that's from onboarding to literally post-purchase or post-engagement. 2, getting the voice of your customer. So this is, in simple terms, ask, get feedback. Okay. How do you do that? Well, obviously there's surveys, that's traditional form, but there's also, you can do something like this and get feedback. You can look on social media, they're talking about you, right? So there, if you have a chat bot on your website, or you have a contact form on a website, that's feedback oftentimes. So I'm telling you to aggregate all the sources of feedback to define your business decisions, your show decisions. Our next topic of the next community comes from feedback. So the voice of the customer, multiple sources, is essential to make sure that you're really delivering a great experience that meets your customers' needs. Last point, because there's so many, but these are things you can do. So in the business world, there is a measurement called NPS, Net Promoter Score, and it's all about the likelihood that someone will recommend your product, your service, your show. So if you do nothing at all, at minimum, you can ask people that question: how likely are you going to recommend what you heard or our products or whatever it is, NPS. But there's also a lot more. So when you think about your business or your show, you can actually ask about, such as the level of effort, an effort score. How easy or difficult is it to do business with us? How easy or difficult is it to access my show? Level of effort, and it's on a scale, right? 1 to 10. And so you could get numeric metrics quantitatively, not just qualitatively, on what your customers think about you. So I'm running out of time, so just please reach out to me if you want to know, how do I measure? How do I design the customer journey? Because it's very intentional and it works. So this is my website. If you want information, there's a ton of information what I'm talking about here, and my contact information is in this QR code. But we'll save time for questions at the end. But again, remember the customer journey. Make sure that you're doing that when you start your show and with your existing show. Thank you.
You know how to get thumbs up. Thank
I
goodness.
think Rob's one is already open. This is
Okay.
Rob's, right?
That's Rob's. Oops,
Okay.
where'd it go?
Share screen. And this is it, right?
Yeah, correct. That's it.
Thank you.
Can we just put it on slideshow?
I know, we're old fashioned here.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm excited to be here, and I've been sharing with other people for many years about how to podcast and how to create content online. And I just want to say that that journey has gone through a lot of paths.
Can I see you? Do we know?
Yeah, I'm sharing because it says stop sharing.
Can you?
Can I
Okay.
see Rob? I know
Oh,
we
they
had.
probably
a-
can't see.
You have to straddle both worlds.
Yeah. I know,
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, I've been really, I think, focused on creating content really over many years. I didn't start out doing this necessarily about podcasting about podcasting, but I've really done most of my podcasting over the last 20 years and stuff has been podcasts about podcasting. So it's one of those things. I've been living in this meta world for a long time, and I'm following the trends in the industry and trying to keep up with where the industry is going. And I think the big thing, the big takeaway, and I think Stacy really tapped into this, and that's building community and building and treating your community and thinking about their experiences with whatever you're doing. I think podcasting is analogous increasingly to starting a business, right? It has a lot of the same characteristics, and what we're seeing right now is so much kind of convergence. And that's why I use this term, because this is one aspect of the convergence that we're actively seeing today unfold in front of us. And there's a lot of resistance on both sides of audio and video about whether or not this is a good thing. Audio has been primarily seen over the last, especially the last 8 years or so, as the dominant kind of media format for podcasting. But if you go back to the early days of podcasting, I'm talking about the 2006, 2007 timeframe, video was about 40% of the podcasting market. A lot of people don't realize that, but podcasting actually has been a video medium since pretty much the beginning, which is a little hard to accept given how much bandwidth was available to everybody back in the early days of podcasting. It's not like it is now, where we just take it for granted that we all have fast internet connections on our phones and our homes and our workplace. But video really took off because of the ability to be patient in a download, right? And it's the same thing with audio. So now we're kind of like completely different now, because the speed is so fast now that we can get delivered this content, whether it's audio or video, almost instantaneously. But that doesn't take away from what we've seen with YouTube. YouTube in the early days was the place that video podcasters went because they didn't want to pay for the bandwidth to deliver video to their listeners or their viewers back in those days. Because in those days, the cost of bandwidth was very high. So now it's come down. So increasingly, we're seeing this interest, and this also converges with demographics and the availability of technology. The younger generation is definitely all about video now, whether it be short video, we're increasingly seeing pressure into long form video, which you're seeing really unfold on YouTube today. But yet we all see the popularity of shorts and vertical videos and things like that. So, my presentation really is about how we need to look at this medium as an inclusive medium from the standpoint of a lot of different things going on, a lot of different moving parts, and it's very difficult to navigate it today. But I hope to highlight some of the important elements of this. But just to kind of give you a little bit of background on me and what I'm doing, because I try and do podcasting so I can learn about podcasting. So I don't know it all, and I learn from everybody that I speak to, and I watch a lot of podcasts and I listen to a lot of podcasts, trying to learn from people. But I do a spectrum of shows right now. I do one show called the New Media Show, which I've been doing for about 14 years. It's a live, online, as well as on-demand video and audio podcast. And I've been doing that show for a long time, and that show's really changed a lot over the years too, because my video experience on that show was, in the early days, was not a priority. So it was more like, we just did it because it was cool to do video online. But it was primarily an audio show, but that's changed now. And then now I'm doing a show for StreamYard now, which is a big kind of live streaming platform. And I do that every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And that is a show called Podcast Tips with me. And I bring on expert guests to talk about the podcasting medium. But the real purpose of that show is to demonstrate the convergence of live, recorded audio and video podcasting. So it's really taking all the elements, and the StreamYard team helps me out with that too by creating a bunch of shorts and vertical videos of that show as well. So it does take a lot of work to do all these things. It's not easy. And I do also a show called Trust Factor and a show called Spoken Life, which is my company. And each one of those kind of has a special place in my interests and my journey in this. And was inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame back in 2017. We just held the Podcast Hall of Fame down at PodFest for the 2024 induction. And that's an exciting thing happening as well. Thank you. And so what I wanted to talk about a little bit, and I've done that a little bit here at the beginning, because I know during the beginning of this, many that are watching this have an interest in starting a podcast, right? So, my presentation wasn't specifically focused on the things you need to think about to start a podcast, but some of the concepts coming out of this will be very helpful in you actually doing that from a convergence strategy point of view, right? So kind of fast forwarding to where we are today, increasingly, and where things are going, less than taking a position, well, I only want to do video or I only want to do audio, which is kind of where we are right now. So this really at the core, it's the decision that you have as a content creator. I'm not advocating one way or the other here, because each one of you have your own skills, your own preferences, your own desires, and there's no one model here that works for everybody. Creating content now is complicated. You have to be, I guess, dedicated to it, and you also have to be focused on what you want to do. And I've been a podcaster that's been focused on what I want to podcast, not so much thinking about what the audience wants. So it's a passion for me, and the audience will self-filter itself to get the kind of content that I have, versus trying to contrive my content around trying to create a topic that focuses on a targeted audience. Now, granted, branded podcast is a different story. But if you're doing a personality-driven podcast, or you're doing a podcast about a certain skill that you have that you want to share with the world, that's where it takes it into that area.
Hey, Rob, one thing
Yeah.
I wanted to add, a lot of times people say to me, well, I don't know what my passion is, right? I don't know. I know I want to show, but I don't know what my passion is. And I often say to them, what do people come to you for? And they're like, oh,
Yeah, that's a good
yeah,
point.
that's true. So if you don't know what your passion is to have a voice around, just think of that question. What do your friends call you about? What did your family call you about? Is it the best cookie recipe? Right? Is it the skill that you know how to do? So just give thoughts. That's such a common question.
Yeah, and also, you know, you need to have energy around whatever your topic is and passion for it yourself. Also you will wind up doing what they call pod fading, which means that you'll start and you'll stop after about 7 to 10 episodes. Because you either run out of something to talk about, or you lost energy in it, or something else came up that pulled your interest away. So that's also another element of this too, but podcasting, that's why I say on the video podcasting side, the personal connection and the intimacy is powerful with video, right? And I think we all kind of know that, seeing people's faces, being able to see them present themselves, there's body language that's involved here, the facial connection is extremely powerful. And as we're seeing more people consume YouTube and video on their big screen televisions that are coming off of the internet now, mainstream media is, as far as my view, is kind of dead. So people are transitioning over to getting alternative sources of information now, more and more. And that's just the trend that is going on here. And then, percent-wise. So doing a combination strategy of audio and video can really expand your reach, right? And that's the key thing here, is that there's so much noise. The actual noise level in the market right now around content is very high, and it's only getting higher. So being in all those places, but you know, like Stacy said, you need to identify where you think your audience is going to be consuming. But being in a lot of different lifestyle type of places, right? So when I say lifestyle, I'm talking about where people are consuming your content. What is the environment? And being everywhere is kind of my approach, right? I want to be on all the platforms. I want to be on all of it. And it's not easy to do that. Don't take that as a say, well, you got to be on every platform, because you may not have time to be on every platform. So that's what you have to walk into, and you may have to grow into that. But you have to start somewhere and trying to find where you feel comfortable starting, and then build on that. And if you have to eventually hire a team to help you get everywhere, then that's what a lot of people do nowadays. Because there are people out there that prefer video, and there's people out there that prefer audio. So that does still exist. But there's increasing research that's coming out telling us in the industry now that increasingly, especially younger people, like to consume video and audio. They like to have the option of video, but they may primarily consume on audio. So being in both places doesn't have to be the exact same content, but it can be. And I think that's a key takeaway. So it's all about repurposing, making this content available in as many different ways and as many different platforms as you can is really key to growing now. And I don't know if all of you knew this, but YouTube is on the cusp of translating all of the content on their platform into all languages on the planet. So that's an opportunity and a little bit of a curse, because that means the content that's produced in China can be available in the US, because it'll be translated into English, or India, or any of that. But that also means that if you're speaking English, that'll be translated automatically into all like 200 languages on the planet. So your audience potential could go way up. And then here are all the apps that currently support true, authentic video podcasts. Now, when I say true, authentic video podcast, that's different than YouTube. What I'm talking about here is RSS-based distribution of video. When podcasting started, that's what we were talking about in the early days, is that instead of an MP3 file linked to from an RSS feed, which is what we see in audio today, it's an MP4 file that's linked from an RSS feed. And these are all the apps that currently support playback of the video in a podcast app. And Apple is by far the biggest one. And well, they are the biggest, period. So, but a lot of people don't know that the video is available in your Apple Podcast app today. And you can get in there by working with a few hosting platforms like Libsyn, Blueberry, and Podbean support video podcasting. So it means that you could upload a video file and put it out into all these listening apps currently today. And I think I've covered a lot of this too. The content repurposing, expanding your reach, and I had mentioned here about RSS-based distribution as well as non-RSS-based distribution, which is YouTube and Spotify. And the increasing use of transcriptions is ever expanding as well. Apple just announced that they were going to be adding the podcasting 2.0 spec for transcription capability, which means that you can generate your transcription through your own process, right? StreamYard offers the ability to create a transcription of your content, and then you basically link that from your RSS feed as like a text file, and attach that, and Apple will get that, and they'll be able to display like closed captioning experiences around your content to reach people with disabilities.
Will you be able to, on StreamYard or on Apple, can you take that file and repurpose it into an AI where you can get show notes made?
Yeah. I mean, you just export that transcription as a text file
Okay.
and just cut and paste it into your AI tool, and it'll summarize it and all that stuff.
That's great.
So, and then I had mentioned about the social media clips, and shorts, and creating other types of visual experiences too that you can do from your content, and create audiograms, just basically just audio with a visual element, newsletters and ebooks, and most of you guys know about all that. I'm a huge fan of live, and that's really for the aspect of doing engagement with your audience and connecting with your audience in a real-time sense. Now, you don't have to do this. This is something that I would recommend that you probably start as a pre-recorded show and try and work your way up to doing this. But ultimately, this I believe is where you ultimately want to be. But it's not for everybody. I mean, I can't say that everyone is going to be comfortable being live. So, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Most of the audience is going to come from the on-demand side anyway. So, you're not going to be missing a huge bunch. But it depends on what kind of show you want to make. This is really a show format question. Because taking questions like through a StreamYard or whatever changes the dynamic of a show. It's not the same thing as a pre-recorded show. Because you're taking questions, you're looking for engagement, and that takes you down different
I
paths.
will say, as I do lives, and if your guest is not used to live, or your podcast partner is not used to live, it can become a disaster really quick.
You can.
Because the first time we went live, my podcast partner got so frustrated because it's quick. And you have to, it's great, but if you're not ready, you better hold on. That's great. But you have to, everybody's gotta be on page like what Stacy said.
Rob, I have a question about
Yeah.
going live. How do you build an audience for live? Because they have to tune in when you're on, so.
Well, it's an opportunity as well, because you can create an event, right? You can promote an event like you did with this thing. And I consider this to be a live event. So it's not unlike that. You just have to have your marketing materials that say when you're live and get it out to your community as much as possible. That's what I do with StreamYard. Now, granted, StreamYard has 104,000 people following your channel, which definitely is a big advantage.
And the same rules apply, like with podcasting, consistency, same time, so.
Well, that's the key right there.
Yeah.
It's the same time every week. It's the same.
But also StreamYard does a great job. You can actually put it on your YouTube and make it an event. So people know, so anybody that's associated and Facebook, so you can actually create the event, so your community will know about it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes your job so much
So
easier.
how many listeners do you have on your live show?
I usually have a handful, but we'll probably get 500 downloads or 500 watches, views.
Yeah, because people are,
Later, you're saying.
Later.
Later.
well, that
Watch it
and
on demand.
people are coming in and out of the live stream, so
Yeah.
your numbers could be a lot higher. People will watch as long as they have time for, and then they'll drop out, and then new people will join you.
We had an interview, it was a 30-minute interview. 7,000 downloads. We don't know how the hell they happened, because it was the worst interview ever. We didn't say anything, but everybody loves this character, and it went from 0 to 7,000 in within a year.
Right.
So there's
right.
no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, it's hard to
Well,
know.
we may
I was
have to
gonna-
have a session on
sorry.
live.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
was
didn't
gonna
mean
ask
to
what
stream.
a lot-
Rob, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
We have a
say.
question back here.
I
Hillary, I
Oh,
love everything you're all sharing, and I'm just curious, I come from the broadcasting world, and I'm a news anchor, former, reporter, everything, and so the podcasting area was like the one medium I hadn't touched until about 3.5 years ago when I was told, why are you not podcasting? So my question is, I do video for my podcast, I do the full episode, and I do put it on YouTube. In fact, for a while, Libsyn's been doing the RSS feed over to the Sagnet image longer than YouTube just announced that they're doing.
yeah, it was a
It's
social
been going-
sharing.
Yeah, it's been going on for a while. But my thing is, you just mentioned something that I'm not aware of, and I'm a Libsyn girl. Are you saying that you can upload your entire video to Libsyn as well? Have I not-
Well, that, with Libsyn specifically,
Yeah,
that takes a special plan.
right.
So you have to basically establish a separate RSS feed for that. So, and it does take up more storage because it's a
Right.
video file, right?
Right, yeah.
So you wind up paying a little bit more for that.
But you still do get the forward over to your YouTube where most people aren't even really watching. the
Yeah,
live, doing
exactly.
Stuff,
I mean, it's not a requirement to do the RSS
Yeah.
based video stuff. By any stretch of imagination, you can just upload to YouTube or Spotify or whatever,
yeah,
and you're getting video out that way, or, I mean, a lot of people are just uploading it to like X, or they're uploading it to LinkedIn or whatever, these platforms, you don't have to pay for the bandwidth, you don't have to create an RSS feed. But that's also complicating things, right? Because it's, if you publish to separate, platforms, that's all you're gonna be doing,
Right.
right? And that's the real challenge here. So.
I think there's a question on them.
Any questions?
I did, I had a question.
Oh, good.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you had mentioned, I think this gentleman helped answer the question, but the purpose of the live, was it like questions and answers? I mean, I'm
That's
using.
part of it, yeah.
Right, like, or would it be an interview, right, that you're doing live and people in the chat are maybe.
Yeah, if you have an expert
Like,
there.
kind of like what's
Yeah,
happening
it's
here?
exactly what's happening here. What we're doing here is a microcosm for what I do with my show for StreamYard every week.
Yeah.
Is, it just happens to happen online. It's not an
And
in-person
live.
thing. But I actually prefer this hybrid of in-person and live.
Ah,
So, Rob,
even better.
do you want to take this question online now, or do you
Yeah,
want to wait till the end?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
wanna
so
take it
let's
now,
see if we can figure it out. It should
Can
be in the
we
chat
Go up,
somewhere.
go up, up, up,
Just
where
go
it
up
says
to
chat,
where there's chat.
where it says chat, go up, there you go.
there you go.
Oh, yeah, people ask questions.
So
Not
person
the-
with your hand raised, did you put it in the chat?
Actually,
I don't know which
No,
question.
they didn't put it in the chat.
They
They
didn't
just
put it in
raising
the
their
chat.
hand.
Um,
yeah, that's a question. for any person. Good.
so if you don't have it in the chat, maybe it's best if you put it in the chat, because we have so many people online, it's kind of hard to sift through and find you. It's like we're taking a bio break right now.
How long can you upload a pre-recorded on StreamYard? Is it an hour of pre-recorded live?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, why don't we get through the rest of
Yeah.
it, because you're nearly done, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then we'll
And
do
then
the
everybody-
questions.
Yeah. So also on the video side, it's really powerful, the visual elements, because you can align any kind of personal brand you have, any business brand, whatever, with video, right? So you can do that with your audio podcast to some degree, with your cover art and your website, things like that, but there's just a dynamic that's different here. Multi-cameras, you can create these different kind of experiences. I'm starting to experiment with multi-cameras even for my own show, but those are kind of advanced concepts here. So I think, you gotta take these things in their steps, right? You can't do everything at once. I wouldn't expect anybody to be able to do all this stuff optimally to get started. Just build up to it and just realize that the more professional your show looks, the more well done, it's put together and whatever, it's gonna help grow your show.
And take the mic out of the box.
That is the first time, I would just say to extend on that, the microphone doesn't belong in a box. Just, as soon as you get it home, take it out of the box. Cause microphones need to be spoken into, so, all right, did I lose my connection? I think I lost it.
No.
So did we do something?
Okay,
I'm done from here.
click again.
Next again?
Yeah, let's dive into this topic. I think as a lot of people have been thinking about podcasting, especially over the last 2 years, it really kind of ramped up a lot when the economy started to go downhill. It kind of started with COVID. People lost their jobs and people were thinking about, well, how can I make side money, right? So we saw this huge spike in new podcasters, right, about 2020, 2021, where we were picking up about 100,000 new shows a month.
Wow.
Prior to that, it was growing like maybe 10,000 a month. So you can see what happened. A lot of people were at home, right? They had a lot of extra time. They didn't have to commute, so start a podcast, build a side hustle business, whatever. And so these topics started to really bubble up in the industry, and they still are hot topics right now. Because as the more people get laid off from their jobs, they think, well, how can I make money, right? So these are part of your options, right? And there are more than this, but these are the primary ways, and it's very complicated. I can't say this enough, that these are not always easy to do. So these are things that some of them you have to build up to, like dynamic advertising is a complicated subject because usually only big shows really use the dynamic advertising, but now we have what's called programmatic advertising, which is basically automated advertising. So a lot of the platforms like Spreaker and Libsyn and a few others out there are rolling this out where it's automated advertising. So you set insertion points in your content and you tell your host that they can sell advertising and put it into your show. You're not involved in that process. So it's almost like automatic advertising.
Does that ruin the customer experience?
Well, that's where we get into this whole other side. You have a limited ability to control the type of ads that go into your show when you participate in this. You can select a genre of advertisement, like you can check a box, say, I want political ads, or uncheck that box, I don't want political ads, right? Alcohol ads, you can uncheck or check that, right? Or a bunch of different categories of ads. So that's what a lot of people are gravitating towards now, because it's hard to sell advertising in your show. It's hard to get sponsors. It's not easy. And if you have a big show, then you can have somebody else do that for you, right? But that's not always, especially when you're starting out, that's not an option. So a lot of people, when they start out, they basically move towards what I call kind of sponsored sales of advertising. If you want to get into advertising, well, that's just one piece of the puzzle. But you can go to, let's say you have a relationship with a company or a brand that aligns with your content of your show. You can just approach them and say, how would you like to buy a spot in my show for $200, per episode? I'd be happy to give your product a try, do a demo on air, or during this, talk about it on the show from an authentic standpoint. I think that's really key to that. And those are typically what they call host reads, which means that the host actually vocalizes an endorsement for whatever product or service that is that you feel good about. And that's where podcasting started. That's the advertising that built podcasting is this. We've been moving into dynamic advertising because a lot of big media companies have gotten into podcasting. But the true authentic advertising that built this medium are host reads. And that's oftentimes baked in content, baked in ads. So then there's also product placement and shoppable videos, which are really another form of host endorsed kind of endorsement content, right? That drives transactions and sales. So that's also a piece of this too. Then there's affiliate advertising, which is more performance-based advertising, where you go like Amazon and you talk about a product that you can pick up on Amazon and you share how to get that product and you get a commission off the sale of that. There's a website you can go to called cj.com that basically has thousands of affiliate companies and brands that you can align with your podcast. And you just talk about whatever brand or company you want to talk about, and then offer a path for that listener to be able to transact on that product, and you get a commission on that.
In your opinion, how many is too many? Because you can, when you hear some of these podcasts, it's like the first X amount of minutes. Look at this, look at that, look at that, and how, what in your opinion, since you've been doing it a
Yeah,
couple
that's
years?
I could talk for an hour just on that topic alone, but it's really, I have a personal preference. I like, if you're gonna run advertising, it's probably in an hour-long program, maybe 3 to 4 spots max. Once you get beyond that, you're getting into the realm of kind of oversaturation.
Is that dynamic or sponsored in your eyes?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, thank
Doesn't
you.
matter. Many podcast hosts will encourage you to do 2 pre-rolls and 4 mid-rolls and 2 post-rolls, which is like 8 spots. And those could be run through dynamic advertising. But I think that's too much for what most people are willing to accept with your show. So you could be doing damage to your audience.
One thing, Rob, that a sponsor asked me to do is, besides the read in the show,
Mhm.
they asked me to put their logo in the image
Mhm.
that was on my website and social
Yeah,
media.
you can do all those things.
Right, so there's other creative things to give them exposure that they pay for.
Yeah, well, and I think that's really key, is that if you're going to share, like, especially an affiliate program, you're gonna need to have pathways to share links to things, right? Whether it's on your website or in your social media, or, but also in your show notes, especially on YouTube, put a link to things in there that you want to transact with to support your sponsors. So I think it's all about trying to offer pathways for your audience to engage in whatever call to action that you're asking them to do. And then exclusive sponsored content, this is where you produce, and this is kind of like what I'm doing for StreamYard too, is that it's basically they're sponsoring me to create content for them. And this is oftentimes done for branded podcasts too. So this is a little bit of a area that if you have an expertise and a reputation, you can parlay that into a relationship with a brand. And then premium content, which I think everybody knows what that is. It's basically pay for watch, pay for listen type of content that you can create a transaction around, right? But maybe in addition to your free content. So that whole freemium model is a big part too. And then there's obviously merchandise and super chats, which is a way for people that offer comments, can also offer like a donation to your show while you're doing it live. So,
That sounds pretty good.
yeah. So I went through that really fast. And there's a lot of concepts in there that need about an hour each one of them. So, but that's who I am. Thank you, and I'm open to questions if we have time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we open the chat and see?
And more.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Maybe please.
Yeah.
So what if, like, I have an idea for a podcast, right? And I know what I want to, my niche is and what I want to do, and I want to interview, and I have an online store, and I've been on your show, thanks be to God, a few times. But what if I'm not good at like all this other stuff, right? Like, what if I'm not good at
You have to
the-
just start somewhere.
Yeah, right, like, what if you don't know how to start?
You come here.
Talk to me, Ann.
Right.
You come here, yeah,
Like,
and you
what
talk
if
to
you
us.
don't know, like, you know, anything about this stuff?
Yeah, I would say that there's lots of resources that are out there that are free. The thing to think about, unfortunately with that is that sometimes they're not really all that great of advice.
So I was trying to get back in.
But yeah, I would probably go to, let's say, a hosting platform like a Buzzsprout or a Libsyn and watch some of their how to start a podcast videos that they do. Because those people really know what they're talking about. But that'd be the easiest way that I can think of, or send me an email, I'll give you some advice too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd offer, is such a good podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Like with Elsie and I mean that.
Rob Walsh. I used to work with
What's that, they're
Yeah.
Libsyn, but they know, I mean, they know their stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, which one did you say? The feed, it's Libsyn's podcast with Elsie Escobar, and why am I remembering Rob's last name?
And Rob Walsh.
Walsh, that's
Walsh,
right,
yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
they're great, and Elsie's great.
Diversity.
I was there for 4 years, so I was with
Oh,
them
were
for
you?
4 years.
Yeah, they're just so helpful.
You know what else that I think could help too? Is if you go on somebody else's podcast, if you've never been on one,
Mhm.
right? Because I think
Oh,
then
yeah.
you see how they do it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I agree, being a guest is a great way to learn about podcasting, because you're getting used to how to use the mic, you're used to, you kind of get used to being interviewed, which is a great experience base. To then get into hosting a podcast, because then you know what it's like, especially if it's an interview program, so you know what it's like to be a guest. But then you have to learn how to be a host, and that's a whole nother story.
And that's hard,
Yeah, it's not easy, yeah.
but it's doable, right?
Yeah, is there any other questions?
What about the chat? Is there anything in
Yeah.
there that we haven't talked about?
I'm sure there is, but.
Can you scroll through that? Please skip.
How do you
Yeah,
know
so-
which ad is best for your podcast or brand?
Which ad is best for your podcast brand? I'm not sure of the question on that. Which ad is best?
Advertisements.
So
Advertise.
basically targeting the sponsors in terms of how it relates to what you're talking about in your podcast.
I don't even know if that person's still here.
Well,
Oh,
Yeah, he's
Dawn.
still there.
Sean, yeah, you can type, or let me unmute
So-
you, Sean.
Yeah, unmute him and maybe you can explain.
Okay, you can unmute yourself, Sean, yes.
Okay, so what I was asking was, because he was talking about the CJ, right? CJ.com.
Yeah. Right,
And so all the CJ.com is a part of ads. It's a part of, right, about how to monetize, that type of thing. So
yeah, it's one way, it's more about a performance-based way of getting ad revenue, right?
so what I was asking about that is, how do you know which one is best for your brand?
I think it's your gut, right? It's also, it's very important for you to be comfortable with the product or the service yourself. Do you trust it? Because you're putting your reputation on the line with that. Because if you recommend it and somebody goes and uses it and they don't like it, then that can reflect on you. So whatever that is, you need to be passionate about it and feel good about it.
Same thing
The-
with a guest. Go ahead.
Oh, the other question that I had, I think it was earlier, you were talking about StreamYard. Now, now, was there other platforms other than StreamYard that you would recommend that would do the same type of, I guess, you can clip a little bit faster or anything that work a little bit quicker? Because StreamYard, I know it can be glitchy at sometimes, but at the same time, there's also OBS.
Yeah,
Is there
correct.
other platforms you recommend?
Well, there are a few others. There's one called Riverside, and then there's another one called Squadcast, which is now part of Descript. So if you're a Descript user, you get a free subscription to Squadcast, which is a very similar type of a video production platform. But I would just do a search for live video. There's also Restream is another one. There's a few others that are popping up too. But I would say that StreamYard is probably the biggest right now. But a lot of people do use the OBS platform, especially it's free. So So there's no charge for it. So, but it also requires some technical ability on your part. And it's got a little bit of a learning curve to it, so.
All right, well, why don't we move around and thank you for everyone being online and appreciate it.
Thanks for all the great questions.
Yeah,
There's 3 more messages.
3 more?
So I don't know if there's like questions.
I really like to see the people here.
Yeah, and
There's
before
3
we
more.
end, I just want to do a shout out to my husband, Richard. We're talking about all this software and hooking all this stuff up and video and mics, and he's the one that figures all that out for everything we do. And when I got stuck here, I'm like, Richard, come here. But yeah, so like when you're talking about OBS and everything, he and StreamYard, like Richard digs into all these things and he loves that kind of stuff. So
What a geek.
yeah.
That's why it's a true partnership.
Yeah.
Divide and conquer.
Exactly.
Speaking of geek stuff, I've been using a new technology out of Norway that basically is an audio recording platform called Nomano. And there's 8 microphones around this little recorder unit, and it attaches to a lavalier type of a microphone. So this whole presentation is being recorded through this platform, but we'll take the audio, upload it to the cloud, and do a bunch of audio optimization on it, and it will make it sound like I did this in the studio.
Oh, wow.
Well, we ought to think about turning this into
Yeah, yeah.
I do have.
But it also has an app that you can, it says four microphones.
We should just make this a podcast.
You can see it.
Oh, love it.
Wow. Are you looking?
In
seeing this, Richard?
1995.
Well, it's about $2,000 for the unit. Yeah.
I do have a question about
Yeah.
the different platforms. StreamYard does a vertical, you've got YouTube that does, I'm sorry,
There's
horizontal.
Zoom too.
No, I'm
Another
just saying,
option,
the biggest problem is when you're trying to repurpose content,
Right,
you get it off of StreamYard, and this isn't a StreamYard problem, this is just a recording problem.
yeah.
It's horizontal,
Mhm.
and then you put it into Opus Clips, you put it into a whole bunch of different programs to
Right.
make it so it goes into the other content. Is there anything with StreamYard or any of the other platforms that you've seen where it's gonna change in any way where you can make that content easier to repurpose?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? It's just, I have a great piece of content and I've got something like right across and.
Oh, it's gonna get easier, there's no question. AI is transforming all this stuff
Okay.
actively right now. The other big thing you're gonna see with AI is that what we've seen happen is a bunch of standalone companies, right? That have started up with AI technologies. What we're gonna see is the big platforms are gonna integrate all this stuff.
There's combine all.
Yeah.
And so that's the transition that we're gonna see play out over the next 2 years. Is all these big platforms are gonna integrate all this stuff. And all these startups are gonna go out of business.
It's just so frustrating as a content creator. You have something on YouTube and they want you to push it on YouTube Shorts, but to put it on YouTube Shorts, I don't even care about the time requirement.
Right.
It's making sure it looks right.
Right.
And
Totally.
it's just that it makes you have to have a team that I don't have.
Have you
Yeah,
used
exactly.
Canva for that at all? Have you tried
Yeah,
Canva?
Yeah, no,
Because I like the way Canva resizes things.
it's
doesn't
not
work
so
for what
much,
you're doing.
it's not so much. Yes, I have used Canva before.
But doesn't work for what you're doing.
It's a long process.
Yeah, it is.
It is, and I'm sorry, I have to actually make money for all the things. So, my mortgage company is really upset, and I don't think.
I got one more right quick. Is that
Yeah, go ahead,
the,
Sean.
the lady that was on before? I wanted to know about her QR code. I thought it was pretty neat because once you hit it,
Oh, yeah.
that's a lot of stuff on it.
Yeah.
Hi, okay.
Hello.
So, yeah, QR codes is such a great way to engage. I see some head nods to engage with people. So the QR code, I use a couple of them. It's really easy. So basically you could use like Talkadot is one. I can send these to you if you email me, but basically they have different functions and you can have like a dot is like a QR code and it has all my contact information, my social media. So it's one code gives you, and it goes right into your phone. So it's very helpful. There's Canva, I believe. Do you know Canva? Have you used Canva? Okay, good. It's good. I mean, anybody in this room
Lots
should
of-
know Canva. So Canva does 100 things for creative people, but it also has a QR capability. So you can create a QR code, give it to anybody, and it will get you to your website, your show, your anything. So those are just some tools.
Oh,
to
I
help.
had question after you're finished with that question.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, I worked on a podcast where my boss was in Germany and she asked people to sign a legal disclaimer before guests would go on the show. So I was wondering, do you use legal disclaimers? And also, because we are in the space industry, which can be niche, do you have any advice on finding a niche audience since the social media space can be crowded?
Yeah, about the guest kind of waiver clearance document, there are a lot of podcast attorneys in the space that will recommend that every show do that. One of the reasons is that sometimes a guest will want their show taken down or pulled or edited, or all sorts of requirements and demands can be imposed. Even when the guest maybe says something in their podcast that they said that they should be responsible for, but ultimately they maybe get in trouble with their employer or whatever. So there are things that can happen that you might want to have a legal document to protect you from. So that is an advice that is commonly given out there about guest scenarios, right? Because there can be legal problems with just about everything you do in this world, unfortunately.
Yeah, and just to add to that, something to really streamline your process, rather than send somebody the form after and have to chase it, what I do is I put it in my calendar invite. And so when they're filling out information about their to come on my show, it's your name, your information, and then there's a checkbox with the information that they're acknowledging right then and there. So I don't have to go chase them. It's just a way to streamline that.
Yeah.
And they should know as soon as they go on the podcast, it's getting recorded. That's the biggest thing. You know,
Yeah.
Yes.
you're gonna get recorded.
Right, so be careful what you say.
Zach, like, I've signed so many forms that look like agreements that are
Right.
just litigious
Yeah.
5 pages, and I'm like,
No.
it's a podcast.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
like, I'm sharing my expertise, but it's the same thing, like, all you really need is that one box that says, I release all rights, all materials, it doesn't have, because you can scare guests that way too, you know? So
Yeah.
it's just letting them know, like, I'm doing you a solid, you're doing me, you're sharing your expertise.
With the intellectual property lawyer in the room.
Yeah, okay.
I'm waiting for Michael to.
Yeah.
Figure it too.
I mean, as an attorney, I would definitely recommend that you get some sort of release. I agree that there's a balance between, protecting your rights and also chasing away prospective guests. I think 5 pages is a lot. I've seen plenty of good ones that are a single page. And, right, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong if somebody makes libelous statements or slanderous statements. You could be responsible for that too. So you want something that would protect you as much as possible under the circumstances. And as Rob said, if they ask for a lot of edits, on Passage to Profit, if somebody says something that they later regret, we always try to accommodate them. We don't want to put something out there that they are uncomfortable with. But if we did have somebody once who wanted to cancel the show after we had, we did a full show, we had a production, he had religious issues with one of the guests. And so that turned out to be a little bit of a spiel. I mean, to go through a whole production and just cancel it because somebody didn't like it is also a burden on you, the host, right? So there's a lot of different sides, and I'm happy to help anybody who is looking for a release. We can find one that's appropriate for your podcast and is comfortable for you, and one that you feel like your guests will feel comfortable signing.
But
It's
the
not
other-
so scary.
Yeah, the other thing we do is we do talk to each guest before we have them on the show, right? And we would recommend that to anybody that has guests on their show. Talk to them ahead of time so you know you're on the same wavelength. I mean, if somebody comes on and they say, I hate this politician, and I'm gonna cuss him out every chance I get on your show, we're a non-political show. We're gonna say, sorry, you're just not a good fit. And we had to tell somebody they weren't a good fit because of stuff like that.
Another thing on that point, which I love that you're mentioning that, is just say to your guests, look, I deal with trauma, I'm a trauma podcast. Is there anything that's off topic? Is there anything you
Yeah.
don't want to talk about? That's it, like, just be transparent.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's a really good
It's a
suggestion.
great idea.
Yeah, like
Well-
just, like, create a safe space for them.
To your point, I had an issue, we had a celebrity guest on, and I say that now every single
Oh,
time,
yeah, I see.
because it was an issue where she wanted us to take something out, which we had no problem taking out. But you know what? She's a guest for life now,
Right.
because we did the right thing. And that's what you have to do. I mean, is there anything off limits? Because they're always trying to promote something. So we give them their chance to promote it, but at the same time,
It's easy to reload an RSS, I mean, a new
Yeah.
episode, it's the same feed.
we'll just edit it out.
Yeah, just delete it and you're done.
So one more thing, with my old corporate hat on, when I was a guest on 50 shows, I also had to tell the host that corporate had to approve it. So there's that angle too. So think about when you have a guest and they're in corporate, there's a slow delay time in that.
Yeah, we just don't do that.
I like you.
Look, I'm on the other side now, so
But it's just, it's too scary.
but that is fact, yeah.
Do we want to talk about the top two items there? really
Yes.
quick?
Yes.
Okay, what's the first?
So someone talked about how do you track listeners
Yeah,
online and then podcast relevancy.
I think that was also about discovery, right? Being
Mhm.
able to be found and build an audience. That's a challenge in podcasting right now because there is, and a lot of people don't realize this, but there is about between 4 and 5 million podcasts that are out there right now, of which only about 300,000 or 400,000 of them are actually actively being updated. So your pool of competition is not as big as you think. Now, granted, a lot of these catalogs, like even Apple and Spotify or whatever, there's just a lot of clutter in there. There's a lot of archive shows that are intermingled with active shows. And these platforms haven't done a very good job of separating the two, right? If you're an archive show, it should be not promoted. It should be kind of pushed down, right? The active shows should be in the pool for discovery. But the platforms haven't done a good job of that. The same thing with indexing descriptions and things like that. Most of the platforms just index your title currently. Apple's doing a little bit better job, but not much better. So there's a long way to go on the podcasting side. I mean, we're so far behind how YouTube surfaces content that it's kind of getting ridiculous, actually. I hope that the industry can work on that.
One thing I've also noticed since I started doing this, and I wish I did this a long time ago, mainly for ABA reasons as well, for inclusivity.
Yeah.
Is that when we transcribe, we're also transcribing for communities that might not be listening or whatnot, but also that gets SEO'd.
Yeah.
It does,
Like,
you
I
can use that
noticed
in
my
all sorts of
numbers
different ways.
Just from all the entire transcript being,
Yeah, I think the transcripts are like the universal conversion of your content into all sorts of new forms as you look to the future, right? You can generate AI generated outlines, you can use it to better target advertising in your show. There's just so many uses for transcription.
So I learned a tip at PodFest, okay, that I wasn't doing around transcripts. So if you have a show and you have a website, you put the show on your website, the show notes, all that. But the part I didn't know is you take the transcript, the timestamp transcript, and you put that on another page on your website.
Right, it's like a
So-
notes.
Right, so I don't advertise that, right, it's not, but I link it from the landing page of my guest, right? That has the show and it has the show notes in the bio. And it's a link that goes to the timestamp summary because there's so much SEO. So most people are not going to that. You have a link to it. So when I market the show, I bring them to the landing page, not the transcript page.
Right.
Well, one thing
But
you
there's
said,
SEO value for that.
you
Yeah.
said too, if they're really only indexing the titles, then you need your keywords in your title,
Yeah,
right?
you do, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't, like YouTube, you can put your keywords in the description, but for podcasts, you have to put them in the title.
Yeah, it's
So-
a delicate line to walk because you can't overstuff your titles also because they get truncated, so you're not even gonna see them anyway, but you have to really use titles that attract people to wanna watch your
Right.
episode, right?
What's your favorite tool for identifying a good SEO title? AI is not your SEO tool.
It's this one for now.
But
right?
there are some like SEO
Yeah.
Rush and others that, do you have a favorite?
No, I don't,
Which
because
one?
I actually do it off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Use it
I would,
for-
I don't know by heart, but message
a little
me
old
and I'll
school.
tell you, but it basically gives me, I come up with my titles. You can use Chat GPT
Yeah,
for
you can.
titles, and then I put it in the tool for ranking.
So answer the public is pretty good.
Yeah.
Which one?
What day is it?
Answer the public is
Yeah.
pretty good.
That gives you an SEO ranking?
Yeah, it gives you a lot of information. It's mostly for keyword, people who are like selling keywords and
Yes, the
pay per
public is-
click.
Is that
But
what it's
answer the public is good and you can do a free trial on it. It's worth it. But you can see for a given topic, what are the most popular searches? What is the syntax that people are using, whether it's how do I start a business or can I start a business or should I start a business? You can see which ones are the most popular. You can see how many searches per month each one of those phrases is getting. So.
I was gonna
I've
add,
got a question.
at podcast, people did say the first word of your podcast or the segment podcast is extremely important. So someone had the something coach. So then we're thinking about, oh, okay, is it the midlife coach or whatever, maybe we can change it around. And the second thing I wanted to add is I was in digital media in 1998. This is like digital media all over again. And I worked for Discovery, where we had, 12 different TV shows and 11 different websites. If you want to generate revenue, you don't want to go on talk to this. You don't want to go on a cost per thousand. You want to do some kind of niche. You want to maybe even partner with other podcasts that are out there. And you want to go after brands that are aligned. Okay, and maybe use that brand and then sponsorship dollars and brand deals they can sponsor. Now, don't think big, after you could sponsor my entire podcast for 2 months or 3 months or for a year. As Stacy said, you can put your logo on there. So when you're presenting a proposal, you go big and then you can go a little bit smaller than that. And if you really believe that there's whether it's Mazda or there's another kind of brand out there that's really good, or do search on Google, go after them. Because all these companies are looking for niche audiences. And if you can show your audience and the demographics and the psychographics that they reach for 30 minutes at a time or 1 hour at a time, where else are they going to go and get that? There is no more TV. There's only streaming video.
Right.
Podcast becoming video is the new cable. So think of your brand and your podcast as a TV show. And when you think that way, just in terms of generating revenue.
There's a lot of people that I know that I've had conversations with that have smaller podcasts. Maybe they're doing like 150 downloads, which is still 150 downloads, you're still on the top,
150 people.
right? And they think that they can't get advertising and sponsors. I'm like, you have no idea when people would, like with the CPM, just $25 an episode, or, just making a couple dollars back could cover your equipment or your, and then you build the brand on it. But I think there's a lot of intimidation with those with the smaller downloads that they think they can get sponsors.
Right.
I mean, I know a guy, he had 4 episodes in, he got a major sponsor, he was a fishing podcast.
Yeah, that's
No.
like niche is like, boom,
He got it
yeah.
because he hustled.
But there's a problem in universally about more is more, right? Social media, like on my LinkedIn has the biggest following, my Instagram, maybe 2,000, Twitter, 3,000, right? That's nothing. Yes, my place is LinkedIn, but it's such an engaged group that matters. The problem is that everybody's about fake famous. Great HBO movie, by the way, Fake Famous. Where numbers seem to be like, oh, they're big. So we've got to change the story and educate that more is not more. It's the highly
It's who.
engaged audience and who.
Like
So-
you're more than your numbers. What I just tell
Yeah.
people, I'm like, you're more than your zip code, your area code,
Chris,
your
they're asking for it.
downloads, you know?
Well, I mean, it's return on investment,
yeah.
right? So,
Yeah,
it doesn't, if they spend only a little bit on,
I want to introduce you.
advertising, but they get a few leads out of it, it's worth it, right?
Yeah, so I'm sorry to interrupt this conversation, but I see Chris has his coat. So Chris is coming next month. That doesn't mean you guys have to leave yet.
Yeah, no, I'm just texting my wife being like, I'm running.
Yeah. So Chris and Stacy and I and Mike Ham, who has the Jersey.
Greetings from the Garden State.
Thank you. Greetings from the Garden State. I kind of knew what it was. Anyways, we're gonna do a panel on marketing. We'd love to have a conversation like this with everybody telling us what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Chris has been a marketing guy for I don't know how long.
Like 30 years.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And Mike Ham has gotten this very niche concept of a podcast and just is doing amazing things with it. He's killing it, really. And so I think next month is just gonna be incredible too. So I just wanted to introduce Chris to everybody so that, come and see him next month.
Yeah, I'll be here next month.
When is
Next month's event.
March 26th at 6:30, same place, same time. So, yeah.
Is there a topic off your head that as we start to build more, right? Next week's more about the promotion and marketing and all that around your show, your business. What other topics do you want to know about? Is it how do you save time with AI? I hear a lot about that. Is it around literally the mechanics of how do you start a show? If you think of anything, not pressure now, send them our way because we want to make sure even online. Oh, someone said hi to you.
Oh,
there
it's
you go.
Marcel.
Okay.
Hi, Marcel.
Anyway, so send them our way because feedback is important.
Yeah,
So
so
Sean had a question. It's in the
Thank you.
chat.
Listening.
I'm sorry, someone had a question. So
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of the guy over there by the clock about like pointing at him. So
Gary.
he had I don't know, huh? Barry?
Gary.
Oh, Gary. Hey, Gary. He mentioned like a vision of the way the podcast should be, like in a vision of like doing a format of this is the new television. Now, I was wanting to know what is the best way to format a team to get a format for video podcasting to help launch your brand. Is there a way to do that, like with I guess the network within the team, or do you need to outsource?
I don't really know the answer to that question, except that there might be agencies that you can be part of, or there might be companies that aggregate podcasts together based around a niche or psychographics. I think there are companies that do that. I was searching for it on Google, but come back next month and I will have a better answer for you.
now you gotta come back. That was good.
I have a question. So for example, if I'm trying to like start a podcast on say something like mental health, where would I go to find sponsors, people that would be willing to sponsor my show? Something companies that are related to mental health. Is that a website for me to go to look for sponsors that would be willing to do that, please?
I would just do a search for companies that focus on that niche,
Okay.
I would say that the number one advertiser in podcasting right now is BetterHelp, which is
Oh, yeah.
a multi-million-dollar advertiser. So there's definitely other companies out there that are focused on that market as well. So I would just try and use companies and then maybe try and network with people on LinkedIn.
Or right in this room. Or right in this room.
Right in this
Yeah,
room, right.
I'd love to share my knowledge on that because I'm a mental health podcast. BetterHelp. as mentioned, it's one of the biggest ones, but everyone's grabbing that one. I would actually try to niche down on what you mean about mental health, because mental health is, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're in a specific area, like I'm a trauma-informed practitioner, right? My podcast deal with trauma, right? So like, I'm not necessarily looking for, who can I get that's a trauma sponsor, right? It might be something very unique to, maybe like an app that helps people, like the Breathe app or Calm app. I'm a practitioner that does, holistic health and well-being. So I look for different kinds of holistic approaches. That doesn't necessarily have to be mental health. It could just be within that, emotional wellness.
I like that.
You
Yeah.
can also talk to your former guests.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
If they have a following, they may want to sponsor a certain block of episodes.
Thank you.
And honestly, I also, one thing I do too is the apps that target me on Instagram, and if I find they're a good fit for my show, I actually retarget them. I cross-target them and I reach out to them and say, hey, I actually do a podcast that you would be great for my audience. Would you be interested in talking more? And I'll just DM them. And I usually get hit rate on that. Like, oh yeah, great. Yeah, let me get in touch with our marketing person. And then,
That's a great.
Or
point.
something that you use in your
Huh?
life,
It's the best way to do it.
yeah, I mean, they're targeting.
I use essential oils.
Yeah.
Sometimes I will
Yeah.
partner with local products.
Yeah.
And that's a great way. Like
Yeah.
if I'm using essential oils by, I try to use good ones, but find something that you believe in, that you value, that you use yourself. You're gonna talk more authentically about it if it becomes a sponsor. And that's where the host read sponsor ads, I
Yeah.
think are better. 'Cause
Oh,
it's
yeah, I
really
love that.
authentic. I think it's much more.
Well,
Thank you, everyone.
yeah, I think, so Rob is driving back to Connecticut. So, and Sonia's driving back to New York. And so, and Antonia's driving back to Long Island. So, we've had people from all over the world, but even people here have long drives, so I don't want to keep anybody longer. I mean, I really hope we can continue this conversation next month. And, Rob, if you want to come on Zoom, because I know you want to drive every month, we would love to have you come back and share your knowledge and expertise, but this has been fantastic. Thank you all for coming. And March 26th, we will have another meeting, and I hope to see you all there. We'll be sending out the information first. Yes.
Can we create like a form of everybody who's in our group so that we have each other's contact? Is that
If that's okay with everybody, if anybody that signed up on Eventbrite, I do have your email. I know Sonia was getting some emails at the front.
Yeah.
So-
Everybody who's in the room, I think mostly signed up and put their emails, correct?
So is it okay with everybody to share your emails with each other? Yeah, if anybody doesn't want to, just let us know.
Right.
Yeah.
I was asking you, can we get Rob's presentation? Can we
Uh,
get your?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I recorded the whole thing. Is it okay if I send the recording out? Okay, great. So anybody that wants the recording too, we'll put it on our Google Drive and send you the link so you can get it. All right.
Well, thank you for putting this out.
It's a lot of fun. I am going to save the chat because I did see there were some links in the chat.
Sure.
It's really nice.
So not sure, but I just wanted to use my friends or not.
I don't care.
So it's not as bad.
Okay, so-
Thank you.
No, you're not. Figure out how to save.
You go to Dave. Oh, please.
I probably would go about that.
Yeah, met him. Yeah, I think it's. I'm sure it might. Were you? Yeah, I was gonna say that nice show bird also. It's in a pick up this. You're all hanging out with the podcast and into a thing and I walked out and everybody was like, "Joe." I mean, it's actually I had friends, you know, that would be out. I went once, yeah, but probably.
Oh, there it is.
So this is the microphone and then
It was taken forever.
the computer and then